Good evening and welcome to our sixth public forum, and thank you all for coming tonight. We can throw up the agenda. You'll see that tonight we're going to cover the overview of the program with Superintendent Follansbee, Dale Dorian, our business manager. Also look at the various options that were considered. Mel Overmar, our owner's project manager, will cover that. Bert Gardner, the project architect from Kalo and Beanick, will cover the project plans. Nicole LaChapelle, mayor, will cover the project cost and tax impacts, and we will have plenty of time for questions and answers at the end of the presentations. Again, thank you all for coming out tonight. We truly appreciate everyone's efforts to be informed with the facts regarding this very important project for our city and for our future. The School Building Committee was formed in November of 2015 to evaluate the need for updating our elementary and middle school facilities and to determine the best model for meeting that need. The committee is comprised, try to stay with us, Mel. The committee is comprised of representatives from city government, the business community, the school department, and residents. What you will hear again tonight is that the need is great. You will see our conclusion of the best model to move forward with, and I hope see our enthusiasm and support for that model. You should know that the committee did not come to this recommendation quickly. There have been visioning sessions that were conducted by the school department to get public input on the educational needs. There have been regular meetings to review very detailed information from the project manager and the architects. There have been meetings in Boston for some of our members to present information to MSBA. And again, this is our sixth public forum in an effort to get all information out to the public. We have attempted to answer every question that has come before the committee, and all questions with answers that have been asked to date are posted on the district website. We feel we have explored all possible options in an effort to bring forward to you the best possible solution to provide an educational facility that will support all the students of Easthampton for generations to come. And I just want to take one last moment to thank the other 15 members of the School Building Committee for their commitment to this process, which, as I said, began in November of 2015. And I haven't told them yet, but the work really begins after May 22nd. With that, I would like to turn it over to Mayor LaChapelle.
Thank you, Tom, and good evening, everyone. I'd like to first thank the efforts of the School Building Committee over the years and being so attentive to all the community input, but also the very rigorous regulatory process that the building authority on the state level requires of a community. This group of folks have dedicated a lot of time and energy and are walking us through very efficiently a process that is 2.5 years going now, and will continue as we go through the vote and then follow-up paperwork. The other thing I would just like to say to kick this off our sixth forum, and I've said it in the past, but I think it bears repeating. One, I strongly believe that a community's values is determined and evidenced in everyday community life by what it invests in public education, but also its children and its future. Supporting our next generation, as well as the generations that are now in school, is vital to a stronger, better Easthampton, but also a stronger region and state. And I know that there is a strong feeling and support in our students now. We'll see that tonight as We the People returns from Washington, D.C., award-winning Unit 2 around the U.S. Constitution. It's very exciting. I would also say that this is a huge next step for Easthampton. I understand the fiscal impact on each and every home owner and also folks who might rent or do business. It'll impact our entire community. The return on investment is immense. But even bigger than that return on investment will be the return on not investing in a new school, what that will do to our local economy, what that will do to the morale of our community, what it'll do to our property values. And I'll talk a little later about some mitigation around the burden on certain members of our community. Lastly, this is truly about Next Easthampton. This is not about an old school or a new school. This is not about how long anyone has lived in this city. This is about what is next and in front of all of us, whether we have been here one day, whether our children are in a home family daycare, or whether we have graduated from our school district several young adults. This is about next. This is about opportunity and strength for our whole city. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Next, we'd hear from School Committee Chair Cindy Kwasinski.
Hi, good evening. Glad to see people in the audience, and I hope that we answer all of your questions tonight. We're really excited. As a teacher and a school committee member, this project is really near and dear to my heart. I think it's something that is really important for all members of our city, and I'm really hoping that we can have a successful vote on May 22nd. A couple of things. This is our last forum, and I want to make two messages really clear. If you want to join the push for the vote, please contact me by email, and I will set you up with whoever we need to have you contribute to this event. But also, if you have any outstanding questions, please don't hold them. You know, things may come up the last couple of weeks as we get closer and closer to the vote. Please email me. If I don't have the answer, I promise you I will hook you up with the right person who will give you the information that you want. We want everybody to go into the vote on May 22nd fully informed and feeling as though they had a chance to really ask every question and get all the answers that they need. So welcome, and we hope we succeed tonight in answering at least most of those.
Thanks, Cindy. With that, we'll look at the program overview. Superintendent Follansbee.
The need, yes. I've been a superintendent, this is my 8th year here in Easthampton, but before that, I was a teacher in the schools, and after that, I was a central office administrator, curriculum director, again, working in the schools. So I've worked in our schools for around 26 years, I think it is. And so I really clearly understand the need. Our elementary schools are more than 100 years old. Maple Center and Pepin, they have antiquated mechanical systems, insufficient spaces for education, limited places for outdoor play, and overcrowding. You know, when I was a teacher, at one point, I had a group that I had to teach on a stair landing because there wasn't enough space. There wasn't a room for me to take a group of students who were having difficulty learning to read in a quiet place. I had to try to make do either out in the hallway or on a stair landing. White Brick Middle School is a open classroom model. Some of you who are around in the 70s probably remember that. I don't know whose great idea that was, but it's a building that was designed without walls between classrooms, and it's a nightmare. The noise level is hard to endure when you're trying to teach, and students are walking back and forth through the classrooms while a teacher is there teaching. Our existing buildings do not meet current standards, not building codes and not safety standards. When you think about what's happening in our world today and how our modern schools have safety features that just weren't even dreamed of back 100 years ago, we want our schools to be safe for children. So we do a disservice to our teachers, students, and families when we expect them to engage in modern teaching and learning in buildings that were designed for education in the 1800s, or in buildings that were poorly constructed, like Whitebrook, and can no longer provide an adequate environment for learning. We had to close school at Whitebrook this winter because the heating system went down, and we couldn't find a place to get a part. In fact, there were no parts because the system is so old, and we had to wait until a part could be created before we could get heat back in the school. So our students lost a day of education because of our antiquated system in Whitebrook. Our schools are off-putting to new families who move into them, and so they live in Easthampton and use the state school choice program to have their children attend schools in neighboring districts with newer schools or in newly built charter schools. The city budget loses $2 million a year in tuitions paid to neighboring districts and charter schools. Think of the city services an extra $2 million could provide. Building the new high school has made such a difference in the education our teachers can provide and the experiences our students can have. All of our teachers, students, families, and their families in Easthampton deserve this same kind of experience. I am hoping that we can provide the same wonderful educational opportunities for all of our students that we are here in our high school. Thank you. Oh, I guess the next one's mine too.
Yours too.
Okay. The next one is pursuing the MSBA grant process, the Massachusetts School Building Authority. So as I was saying, having been in these schools all of these years, my hope when I first started this as a superintendent and was involved in submitting statements of interest to the School Building Authority is that they would pull us in for a building project. This was after the high school was finished. The former mayor required that I submit statements for Whitebrook Middle School. So I did that for 2 years to no avail. We were not considered by the School Building Authority because Whitebrook is a relatively new school compared to many of the schools in the state. So when I was able to, I decided that following year that I would submit statements of interest for all of our schools, all of our elementary schools and our middle school, thinking that surely the state would be interested in one of our 100-year-old schools for renovation, and at least we would get them here to our district and we could have a conversation. I could have a conversation with them. So Mayor Cadger supported this effort, and she was with me when they came to visit us at Maple School. You have to choose one school as a priority. The School Building Authority, this has been on Facebook a lot. Can we do a different project instead of the one we have? You can't. So when they take you in for a project, they take you in for one project. Our priority project was Maple School. And so that's the project they were going to consider. But when they came to visit us, Mayor Cadger and I, at Maple School, I said to them, I'd been thinking about this a long time, actually for years. I thought, well, could we consider consolidating our elementary schools with Maple School? Maple School is still part of our project. So I asked the question, and they said yes. As long as Maple School is part of your project, you can consider that as a project. So I was emboldened at that point in time, because I'd also been thinking, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could do a pre-K to 8, so that not just our elementary school families would have new modern facilities, but also our middle school families, that all of our students, all of our families would have the same kind of experiences that our high school students and families have. So I asked, what would you consider a K to 8? And they said, yeah, it's not our decision, it's your decision, as long as Maple School is part of that decision. And so that's how it happened that we are considering a project pre-K to 8 for those reasons that I've identified and some other reasons that we're going to be talking about this evening, so that there is an equity of educational experience for all children and all families here in Easthampton. Our old schools have well served our families, but the typical age for a school to be changed, renovated, or remodeled is 50 years. So, our elementary schools are twice that. So that is kind of the story of how we got to considering this pre-K to 8 model.
Thanks, Nancy. With that, we'll talk about where we all started, I guess.
So the beginning of I'm going to speak very briefly about the beginning of the design process. Once the design team was assembled, our architects brought in an educational consultant to work with a large group of stakeholders, including the mayor, school department employees, students, parents, and community members. There was a group of almost 35 who were guided through 3 days of exercises that helped us think very deeply about what we wanted to accomplish educationally in the new building. And through that process, we came up with all kinds of ideas of what we would like the new design to be able to accommodate. And all of that information formed the basis of an educational program that the superintendent was charged with writing to submit to MSBA for approval. And that was the beginning of the design process.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the options that were looked at actually early on and through the development of deciding what to submit to the MSBA. Really what it came down to is, as Nancy had said, Superintendent Fowlsby had said, it had to include Maple School because that was the one that was targeted by the MSBA as a priority school, or we targeted and MSBA agreed that they would fund the Maple School as the target school. So alternative A, as you see on the slide, is just repairing Maple School. What that means is simply bringing it up to code, doing what you could do to it to modernize it, but frankly, there's not an awful lot that can be done on that site. The site is too small. The building itself is limited by its age and its configuration. But just to do that, the total cost being $21.9 million, of which the district would pay $9 million, and what you'd end up with is a fixed Maple school, but nothing that really would be considered in modern day the preferred design for a new building. The next alternative was, as Superintendent Fowlsby had suggested, was a new pre-K to 4 building that would replace then all 3 of the 100-year-old elementary schools with a new pre-K to 8. That total cost would be $60.5 million with a district's portion of $34.7 million. And however, as you recognize that solution, and as the superintendent suggested, you'd still have Whitebrook being unaddressed. Therefore, the families would have children in a new school from pre-K to 4, go back to a seriously inadequate Whitebrook school for the middle school, and then come here to the high school to finish their secondary education. Clearly, that is problematic. Also, it didn't address the problems with Whitebrook. The next alternative then dealt with the pre-K to 8 project. All of these alternatives would identify or would deal with all of the remaining schools. In other words, the 3 elementary schools as well as Whitebrook, but there's different approaches to how that would be dealt with. The first one is what we refer to as the minor addition and major renovation. In other words, you try to keep as much as you can of Whitebrook, renovate it, and do minimally an addition to satisfy the program needs. That resulted in a $107 million total with a $54 million by the district. Another approach is to try to keep less of Whitebrook School, of the Whitebrook building, tear more of it down, build more new, but still renovate portions that could be kept, theoretically, perhaps the auditorium or some other spaces that potentially could serve the future of the district. That was slightly more expensive, $112 million with a $61.7 million price tag for the district. The third option was a new pre-K to 8, but this retained the existing athletic field, and therefore it limited the design team relative to where that new building could go on the site. In other words, and we really struggled hard, I should say, Kayla and Beanick struggled hard to make it work. And it was pretty limiting in terms of how that building would be designed to try to keep both the Whitebrook in operation while the new building was being built, as well as not replace or displace the football field. It proved to be problematic in that it made service come to the front of the building. When at the end of the project, when Whitebrook would have been torn down, it ended up with a project that we all thought it's just not going to be happy with in the long term. It's just not the best solution. So, as an alternative, and quite a ways into thinking about these things, Kayla and Beanick began to look at, okay, what if we weren't under the constraint of trying to keep the existing football field? So with that, a new design evolved, which was actually essentially the same price, actually a little less expensive for the Easthampton's portion, and it provided a much more substantially appropriate building design for the project, and that's become the one that is preferred. Just to give you a quick rundown of what all that means is that the total repairs only cost is only repairing a building. It doesn't mean really bringing it up to 21st century standards, and it really when or if MSBA would invite then you to come back and do another project is unknown. So it's really a shot in the dark in terms of trying to deal with a much broader solution to the district's antiquated schools. The new pre-K to 8 school preliminary cost, as I mentioned, is $109 million, and the anticipated portion, once the MSBA has approved the project, would be $59 million to the city. And of course, as you all know, prices go up. The price would go up if you delayed doing this project later, or any other project for that matter. And just to give you an example, inflation in construction these days is running about 4%. And if you applied that 4% to the high school cost, which was $43.7 million, it would bring it to $60 million today. So you can see the sort of escalation that takes place. And honestly, the approval of Easthampton back into the MSBA program happened much quicker than in most districts. So you've really have an opportunity to sort of beat that inflation as much as possible if you take advantage of it. Beyond the scenarios that we looked at to address Maple, a lot of concern came about, let's look at other scenarios to deal with all of the schools in Easthampton if we took another approach besides the new pre-K to 8 project. So we did that. And this scenario 1 says, okay, what if you simply just repair all 4 of the schools? And what would that sort of thing be? And of course, you can't do all of them at once. You'd have to do it sequentially probably. And so laying out a sequence of doing those and applying the inflationary factors and whatnot, the total cost of just repairing those buildings, which wouldn't give you the modern facility that you would get with a new building, would cost you over $135 million. And a very large portion of that would be on the district, because those sorts of repairs have to be covered under another program with the MSBA that doesn't offer as much support for those repair costs. The second scenario would be to say, okay, if we built the new pre-K to 4 building now and left the Whitebrook building to do later, what would that look like? And so therefore, assuming that we did the pre-K to 4 in this grant cycle, in this opportunity, and then assuming that it took just as long to get Whitebrook approved for the second go-round of MSBA, that total cost would be $145 million. In other words, it's allowing the same sort of time factor between approving this project and a high school project and applying that to Whitebrook. With an $80 million cost. The cost actually goes down compared to the repairs, but the cost is still very significant. This is a very unique opportunity, as Superintendent Fowlsby mentioned, because although it's taking a big bite in terms of financially, it's been both acknowledged by the mayor and the superintendent, it really is the cheapest approach to addressing all 4 of the buildings at once at $109 million with a district portion of approximately $59 million. So the building committee struggled long and hard on this, and it's just determined. I don't normally read these things, but I'm going to do it this time. At the conclusion of the analysis of all the options, Easthampton's building committee concluded that a new pre-K to 8 school is the best approach to meet the educational needs of the community and represents the best long-term value, for the city of Easthampton. Got a frog in my throat. Sorry. Yeah, just at the end, though.
And with that, I'll take over for you, Mel.
Thank you.
So as most people know, for those who may not, the new school is planned for the Whitebrook campus. Question's been asked often, why Whitebrook? The simple answer is that's the only available city-owned parcel that's large enough to support a new school project, whether it be a consolidated K to 4 or a pre-K to 8 building. The bonus is, for people familiar, as most of you probably are, if you can get past the inside of the building, the site at Whitebrook is absolutely beautiful with Mount Tom in the background. It's a very picturesque, scenic setting. It offers tons of opportunities educationally to connect with nature. They've got access to perennial streams, vernal pools, wetlands, and just a lot of open green space for the kids to play at recess or for gym class to go outside for recreational uses. As those familiar with the project are aware, Whitebrook does have challenging soils. It's a lot of clay on the site. It's very common in the Pioneer Valley as a whole. Our geotechnical engineers are very familiar. They've written specifications for projects in similar sites all up and down the valley. And our structural engineers are familiar with these things too. And the bottom line is, by understanding the conditions, building technology today can overcome them through engineering. So there's really no concern that the new building will have settlement issues and similar things that Whitebrook Middle School has experienced since it was built in the 70s. From a safety perspective, it's a single location for all the K to 8 students. Nobody likes to think about the worst case scenarios when it comes to safety, but what this does is, for the first responders in town, it eliminates kind of multiple sites where a coordinated attack could happen. They could focus all of their resources in one location if the worst scenario were to unfold in town. Whitebrook's also got 2 access points for first responders to get into the site. One from the Treehouse community neighborhood is a gated access, and then there's the main access on Park Street. Traffic in and out of Whitebrook today is an issue, as most people who have middle school students or have had middle school students in the district have experienced. So we did engage an engineer. The traffic study was performed and completed at this point. The initial report presented the findings, which were that the entrance out of the school making a left turn received an F. So they grade intersections A through F, F obviously being failing just like in school. When we add the school, it continues to be an F, but kind of a much worse scenario. It goes from a minute or 2 to make a left turn to almost 11 or 12 minutes to make a left turn out of Whitebrook. There are also other issues, traffic issues on Park Street, not related to the school. We've got speed on that street has always been an issue, And then there's the intersection of South Street, 200 feet from the school entrance, and it's on a bend, which creates some challenges too. So the second half of the study, which was just completed and presented to the building committee a week ago, offered some mitigation solutions. The strategies included anything from just a simple turning lane in and out of the property, turning lane with traffic light, and the solution supported by the building committee was a roundabout there. The benefit of the roundabout is it doesn't create additional challenges with stacking traffic at South Street, which is so close. It slows traffic on Park Street regardless of the intersection, so you won't have people speeding up and down the street, especially coming into that bend with South Street. People will be forced to slow down because of the roundabout. And it will control the flow of traffic in and out of the school. As a positive benefit of that, in the slower traffic, pedestrian access to and from the school is also going to be greatly increased in terms of safety. So the overall organization, as Mel had mentioned, we've got the new school proposed where the existing football field is, a new football field up kind of where the southern parking lot is on the school and overlapping the existing school. Depending on how pricing goes when bids come in, we'll work in some alternates, one for a potential track and potential tennis courts. It'll probably be a combined athletic amenities alternate. What that means is that the base bid, the $109 million that we're guarantee you'll get your school, will cover all of the academic needs. It'll cover parking, bus traffic, it'll cover the play fields, it'll cover the entrance condition. But then if there's money left over and the city decides to, they could pursue possibly a athletic track, tennis courts, or other similar things. So as far as the clay soils, coming back to that, there's been questions too about the preloading that was done for the high school, and that perceived as an additional cost for this project. In this case, we've got a decent amount of regrading to do on the site, so the materials brought in for the preloading are going to be quality materials, and those can be reused in the grading effort. So we won't be paying for a lot of material to be trucked onto the site and then trucked off of the site. It can be stockpiled someplace and used to improve the overall topographic layout of the grounds. The organization of the building has remained the same even prior to its location on the football field, with the idea being that we've got classroom academic wings, each one having 5 classrooms in it, and then a central kind of common shared program. The shared program areas would include the gymnasium, your cafeterias, access to the libraries at the second level would be achievable in that center area. And that's the area of the school that can be used after hours by the community. It's easily isolated from the academic wing so that after hours you don't have to worry about people wandering through the entire school. And it's a central location for those services such as dining in the cafeteria or going to gym, so that neither the elementary or the middle school kids have to cross an extra long travel distance to reach that program area. Security in the school obviously is on everyone's mind, especially with recent events. Architecturally, the goal of the building is to slow progress of any intruders that would seek to gain access to the building. Some of the provisions that we've put in place for that is the interior vestibules, once students are in the building, are locked. Visitors cannot enter the building without passing through the administrative offices. They've got to be identify themselves at a camera location, then be buzzed into the office. We can also control access out of the office once they're in and signed in and confirmed, so that people can't just charge through and into the school. The interior vestibule doors, in addition to being locked, we're planning to provide bulletproof glass, and all windows on the exterior that are within reach of the ground will be shatterproof, so someone can't knock a window out and gain access into one of the classroom wings. Each of the classroom wings, as I mentioned, for the separation of community use and academic use, are equipped with a pair of security doors. So in a lockdown scenario, if someone did get to the office or beyond, simply through the use of technology, and a lockdown scenario can be activated, which would shut and lock those doors, so that even if they get to the lobby spaces, they can't make it into the classroom wings right away. All this with the intent of giving first responders time to get to the school. There'll be a video security system. Dispatcher will be able to see what's happening at the high school in real time. And then, let's see if there's anything else I wanted to mention there. The building itself is fully sprinklered for fire protection, so that's good both in the event of a fire, and it's also good because it limits potential of someone trying to force an evacuation by fire. So just a quick blow-up of how the security into the building works. One thing I didn't mention in the overall description is that from both administrative offices, there's a view out to the parking lot. So even before someone gets to the camera and asks for permission to come into the building, the administrators and this school resource officer will be able to have a visual of who's approaching the school. The exterior vestibule doors are open where they'll come in and they'll buzz in at a camera location, identify themselves. The school will then let them into the office where they'll have to sign in, state their purpose and where they're going, and then if deemed appropriate, they can be let into the rest of the school. So concept classrooms. The idea with the classrooms are to size them appropriately for today's education. And what that really means is to make sure that they're equipped to offer flexibility to teachers to pursue different pedagogies in conveying their curriculum to the students. Flexibility is important, so from the furnishings that we select for the classrooms, and then space within the room to arrange the furnishings the way the teacher needs them to work. The classes are intended to be set up so that they support either a whole group lesson, small group projects, or individual learning. The way Easthampton delivers their curriculum is that they start out with a whole group lesson and then they break into pods and kind of rotate through the room in their stations for the most part. Every classroom has a couple sinks so that teachers have access to, water for science experiments or whatnot. And then for students that may be overstimulated or for special testing needs or focused small group projects, every classroom in the building has an adjacency with a small group room. The primary purpose of that room is to provide quiet space for some of the special needs students that are fully integrated into the population that might become overstimulated from time to time in the classroom, that they have a quiet space to get to. But the space is flexible and can be used to support a variety of different more one-on-one intensive needs. The building massing and organization has kind of from the onset considered passive solar strategies in all of the classroom wings. We've really strove to orient those on an east-west axis so that we can kind of capture the passive solar qualities that may benefit the school. The massing also creates protected courts on the elementary school side of the building where we can have play areas for students at recess. We try to consider the scale of the size of the students. We've got a wide variety of age groups here, so we want the scale of the building to kind of respect where they're at in their development. And then you can kind of see in the lower image at least, you've got some larger windows and then a lot of smaller windows. This kind of comes into the idea for the classroom that every classroom have a view outside and that every classroom have natural light. Views outside can be distracting, so the larger window that has the view outside, we've worked hard to kind of locate that directly across the entrance. So as students enter the room, they can get a glimpse outside, but it's not a series of large windows that they'll be tempted to look outside all day necessarily, but they'll have the benefits of the natural light and seeing the brighter sun, the shadows coming across to keep them engaged. And then just early thoughts on materials. Would be naturally sourced materials. Well, there's a strong desire to connect students with nature in Easthampton, so we're looking at clay products like brick or terracotta as the materials for this building right now.
Okay, a little bit of just overview on the overall schedule. We're working through the feasibility study now. It will be going to the MSBA if all of you approve it in 3 weeks, which will then get approval from the MSBA and allow us to move in the final design phase of the project, in developing the final design and the construction bid documents. Those would be, that process, the green there that's labeled design, will take about a year. So mid next year, we should be ready to start construction after bidding. And it's about a 2-year project. So the expectation is to move in the summer of 2021 and open it for opening of school in 2021. And then once the building itself is completed, we have to tear down the existing White Brook School and build parking lots and fields and whatnot. So the last half of 2021 will be dedicated to that exercise. I just laid out the in the lower frame there the comparison of what it took to do this building. As many of you probably remember, we did the construction here while the old high school was still out there where you're parked now. And it went through a very similar sort of process, and it's taken about the same amount of time. It's really, you know, from the time that you submit these statement of interests to actually moving into the building is, what is that, about 7 or 8 years, I think. So it's a long process to go through, but the rewards are at the end.
Thank you. So some of these numbers are familiar. We don't have, or I don't have a lot of update, as we are not going to be bonding, actually going out and starting to talk to bonding agencies until August 2019. And a lot of what we'll do just before that, as our plans get more and more narrow, is look at different structures and rates, and also the amount of money that we might bond in different segments. So we might do a smaller amount up front to get the basic raw materials to the site, and then do a bigger bonding once we know we're ready to start doing classroom and inside work, electrical work. The market conditions, of course, will determine the when, the where, the amounts. I am working with our financial advisor as well as our finance director, also working with our internal auditor and looking at past audits to understand the flow of our debt structure, what the city is able to do, and keep our bond rating. Because before we go out for these bonds, we will have to have a re-rating of our bond rating. We are putting things in place now to keep where we are right now, a AA+, and we would hope that this will be one more advantage for us to get a good finance packaging. A couple of questions have come up about how to best mitigate the taxes that will come with this project. So of last Wednesday, through our assessor, Lori Stewart, we proposed an increase under 41C, which is the senior exemption, from $700 off your taxes to $1,000. Right now, under 41C, it's $700, and you must be at least 70 years old. We are also asking for that beginning age to be reduced from 70 to 65. That's before the Board of Assessors now, and then we'll go forward to City Council for consideration. I will also say a couple of questions have come up. We have technical documents on the landing page of the city's website around these programs. Some folks in the community have asked for a one-page fact sheet or a Q&A prepared by the city. I have very purposely decided not to do that. There's Q&A and information on the state, as well as some of the federal documents that we've attached to the website. These exemptions and choices that folks have to make around their taxes are very personal, and they are very particular to their tax situation. I don't feel it's the place of the mayor's office or the city to be lending advice on what exemption may or may not be appropriate for any one family or individual, as well any tax deferral programs that actually came up on the last. I think that's best decided by following the state and federal tax guidelines and talk to your own tax advisor. That said, there is tax advice available at no cost through the Department of Elder Affairs. If anyone is having a problem accessing the number or finding that information, I welcome you to call my office, and we'll also post specific information on the city's website so folks can walk through and talk through options that they may be considering. The other question that has come up around the bonding date is, when will we see impact in our actual tax rate? When will it show up on our tax bills? We're basically, the rough estimate or how this would work, it's about a year after the first draw on our bond. So the first disbursement of money to, say, buy the steel, you're looking at a 6 to 12 month effect on your tax rate after, and it'll be in the following fiscal year. If we were to bond in several parts in several bunches of money, there would be following adjustments to your taxes that would be due to the school. And that is separate from what we look at every year around our tax rate. I'll just end with a couple of points here. And I think that I'm certainly have not done a good enough job to really communicate. The other side of this equation around the cost of the school is, of course, revenue. And certainly there is a strong commitment, and I want to be very clear, from my office to look at new revenue sources. So just since I took office, around that revenue, knowing that we had some tax implications coming, we've received 2 community compact grants for $25,000 each to improve our financial documents, as well as how we were reporting and recording every dollar that comes in and out of our city coffers. This will assist us in, one, attracting more state and federal money for development. As well, it will help us maintain the highest possible bond rating. Additionally, we were just certified as an opportunity zone, one of 138 in the state that is now being recommended to the federal government, that will give us opportunities to more grants, but also, more importantly, to private development to make Easthampton the most attractive city that we can be for folks to come in, developers to come in and build high quality, purposeful housing and small business space that match our community needs. All of these revenue attempts will, one, have just started, will continue. We have some more things in the chute. We had a great meeting last week with the Secretary of Economic Housing and Development, Jay Ash, who understands the needs of our community and also the unique opportunities. And I look forward to working with him, along with my team in City Hall, to make sure that small business development and retention of the businesses we have, as well as increasing housing stock that will increase property tax amounts coming into our coffers, happen so we can offset the cost of this school. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor LaChapelle. Cindy, I think it's yours.
So anticipated benefits. This school will improve teaching and learning. It will provide equity of opportunity for all of our students. Right now, the best educational environment that we have in Easthampton is our high school. And our elementary and our middle schools don't have that same advantage. They don't have that equal opportunity for modern technology and a beautiful environment that's flexible. Teaching has changed over the last, I don't know, since I was a little kid, but over the last 100 years, the way we teach students has really changed. We need to be able to change our classrooms. Bert talked about starting with whole group instruction and then moving to small groups and then splitting off to some individual work. A good classroom, a modern day classroom, has that ability to quickly change from one structure to another. And if you look at the size and the configurations of a lot of our classrooms, we just don't have that ability. So our elementary school and our middle school teachers are doing the absolute best they can to be flexible and to regroup, but in a situation and an environment that is really constricting to them. This school is designed so that it's going to open up that opportunity. Teachers will be excited, kids will be excited. They'll be able to move the way we know nowadays they should be able to move to be able to learn, from that whole group all the way down to the individual piece. So that's really crucial, and it's so exciting to look at those plans and know that that's going to be the difference. This will also be a state-of-the-art facility for community use. We're going to have recreational and performance spaces and dining spaces. I mean, we have places, our school buildings, where there's not even a cafeteria. So just the excitement of being able to have a common place to gather in the morning, a place to have your lunch all together, a new PE facility. It's going to make a huge difference in morale and in the excitement of our children, which improves learning. We're going to have an improved football field. We're going to have provisions for an improved running track. And then if we look at the cost-effective solutions, not only does this maximize the cost for the MSBA, but we lose a lot of money to charter and choice. And when we built the high school, we were able to bring back some of those choice out dollars back to the city. We're still losing a lot of money every single year, not because our teachers and our teaching programs are not effective. They are, but because new families coming in look at our buildings and make the choice that I'd rather choice my student out to a more modern facility that looks like it's with it. And sometimes these kids never walk into the building and start. So we lose them for that whole piece from pre-K all the way to middle school. Now, if we put this new school together, we're going to have a shot at bringing back all of those choice dollars, or at least a lot of those choice dollars. People are going to be excited about allowing their children to learn in this new modern facility. And the last thing I wanted to say is, my husband's a real estate agent. And when he takes customers around, the first question they ask for families is, what are the school systems like? Now, we can say our school systems are strong, and they are. But imagine how your real estate values are going to go up, and they will, when we build a beautiful facility that provides a great education in a beautiful environment that's modern, that's ready for a technological society, that's pre-K all the way through 8. Your real estate values are going to increase. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. So just to wrap up this portion, just to let you know what the next steps are. As we said earlier, this is our 6th and final forum. We've been at this since November of 2015, and we hope that we've gotten out all the facts and information. As I said earlier, it's out there on the district website. There is information out at the front table. Question and answers that we've received so far are printed up out there for you to take. As you all know, the vote is scheduled for May 22nd. By July 11th, the schematic design will be submitted to MSBA, and we expect MSBA approving the funding agreement on August 29th at their meeting. And then, as Mel said it earlier, the next 2 processes are fairly lengthy. So the final design and bidding takes approximately a year, and then 2 years for construction, And if the stars and planets line up, we open the doors of the new school in the fall of 2021. So lengthy process from when we began. So I think we're ready to open it up for questions. Larry, could you just move that mic maybe back a little bit so the folks don't feel like they're walking up on the stage? And I think that's the only one we have tonight. So if there are any questions, we'd be happy to try to answer them. Come on up to the mic. I've got a gentleman coming right behind you, then.
Hi, my name is William Joss. I'm a new resident in Easthampton, and so I apologize if I'm asking questions maybe like this, that you've already talked about. This is my first forum, and I certainly understand the need for education. I'm a graduate engineer and have a couple of my kids have all gotten master's degrees and so on as well. So I understand the need, but I was more concerned with the cost. In looking around town, unfortunately not with your husband, one of the ways we've evaluated the reasonableness of a house is the cost per square foot. And it turns out in Easthampton, the cost is about $180 a square foot. The cost of this new school is $620 a square foot, which is about 3.5 times the cost for a house. That seems a little bit high to me. It's about 3.5 times the size of a house. And although it's apples to oranges, just to put things in perspective, for this $109 million, if you looked at the average cost of a house in Easthampton, you could build 455 houses, just to give it some kind of perspective. Also, the tax increase is about 21%. That the 2.5% prop, 2.5 from the state, kind of pales in comparison to the 21%. So it is a staggering, to me, as a retiree, a staggering increase in the taxes. Thanks.
Maybe I'll just comment a little bit about the cost. It really, comparing existing housing prices to these kind of buildings, it is like apples and oranges. Unfortunately, where you're dealing with certainly the type of construction, steel construction with sprinklers and fire alarm systems and all the sorts of AV and all the sorts of things in it. It just doesn't, there's just no comparison to residential construction. It is very much in keeping with, as a matter of fact, you can go on the MSBA website and look at past schools that have been built, and you will see that it's very comparable to other schools in the state that have been constructed. So it's not like this is some sort of Taj Mahal or something that certainly is out of keeping with normal construction of these types of projects. Just again, trying to put it in perspective of what the project costs are.
The committee knew from the beginning that this was a big project with a big number, and that's why we worked so closely with the mayor's office and others to do whatever we could to try to mitigate that cost. We've never built another elementary school in the city of Easthampton. We have the original schools that were built. At least I can't remember back 100 years if we did, but we're on our 4th new high school, but we have not built a new elementary school. So whether you call it deferred infrastructure improvement, whatever you want to call it, we have sort of kicked the can down the road. And, I've said to folks before, if you look at the new Meineke commercial that's out there, and I'm not trying to plug Meineke, but they say pay me now or pay me later, but you will pay me. So we can defer it, we can wait, we can keep going the way we're going, but someday, some generation will pay for new schools in Easthampton. And I think, as Mel said earlier, it won't get any cheaper, unfortunately. Yes, sir.
Can I just weigh in on that a little bit? I just wanted to remind everybody that the cost of doing nothing is going to be worse. We're going to get a reimbursement for a portion of building this new school. However, if we do nothing, Our buildings are old. They are in need of major repairs. You can't not educate your students. You can't just close down the schools and say it's going to cost too much to repair our buildings. You have to continue to educate them. They have to be educated in a safe environment. Therefore, we have no choice but to make those needed repairs. So it's either build a new school that's going to be efficient and safe and up to today's standards and future standards, or do nothing and at the cost of staggering amounts of money, repair our schools and try to creep along, piecing together buildings that really have, they've done their work. It's time to retire them. They can't do much more. If we wait, we're going to be putting money into new boiler systems, new electronics. There's no getting around that. You saw the slide where we talked about the difference between making major repairs and building new. And it's really more cost effective to build new and to build new now.
I want to commend the committee and all the activity they've done. My name is Norman Taft, and I'm a retiree like some other folks here, and I'm concerned with the fiscal aspects of this. I'm not anti-education, but in reality, we still have a 14-year mortgage on this facility, which won't come due until sometime around 2032. That's ongoing. Now, in the last year, between fiscal 2017 into fiscal 2018, the assessed rate per thousand increased by 4%. The aspect of the $2.98 a thousand, plus what the mayor has requested, 2.92%, in the increase of the budget, is going to have an impact. Now, as a senior, my earnings, Social Security, pension, are pretty much frozen. Where many of you folks who are still in the working segment, you have annual increases each year or thereabouts. So, well, we hope. But the bottom line is, I've looked around Arizona, New York State, and they have programs where seniors, people on fixed incomes, disabilities, veterans, are tax exempt from the school portion of their property tax, income tax. And from my perspective, getting involved, I plan to, with the help of others, search to see what the common denominator might be in allowing seniors to be tax exempt from the school portion, which is roughly 42% of our city income, of our city revenue. So I think from my perspective, we've kind of gotten to the point where there's no increases in income, but yet there's going to be, our ability to pay is going to be more and more diminished. We have the Republicans who are in the House who are looking at curtailing entitlements. That's going to be in play. We have local, the local folks who are going to dramatically increase our property tax bills. And from my concern, as a senior, I'd like to be treated fairly. And I'd like to I'd like to think that most of you would want to be treated fairly. But I think when all is said and done, whether it's the 298 or the 384, the 4% assessment and the increase on that, and what the mayor is providing now, we're probably going to see in the next year or two a $1,500 to $2,000 increase in our property taxes. And from Tom Brown, who's over here, who I've known for a period of time, and others, we expect our leaders to lead by example, and it probably wouldn't be unreasonable for them to put $5,000 or $10,000 of their own money up front as an example of leadership. Agree or disagree with me, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. But the bottom line is, I hope by 2019, during the municipal elections, that we will have something on the ballot that will save seniors from paying the school portion on their income tax or property tax bills. Thank you.
Sure, go right up to the mic. You guys just kind of wait in line if you want.
Thank you very much for having this forum, and I really appreciate all the hard work you've all done. I can't tell you how much. And Nancy, congratulations on your retirement. I've known Nancy for as long as she was in the school system. I was on the school committee for 14 years, and we fought tooth and nail every single year for the elementary schools. We wanted to build. I was in Boston. I can't even tell you how many times. They came here, they looked at just like they did for you guys, they looked at the elementary school. Oh yes, you need a new elementary school. Well, they finally allowed us to get the, apply for it, and it didn't pass. But that was in the end of the 70s and 80s, and people were having a hard time paying their bills. Well, your figure here says it's between $298 and $384. So that brings the total close to $20 per thousand, right? Well, after the high school was built, our taxes, or my own taxes, went up $1,000. So I pay $6,000 a year for taxes. So with this, if you figured it all out, I'm going to have to I'll be paying probably $1,700 more. So my taxes will be almost $8,000. And the sewer and the water are going up. And I know in the very close future, we're going to have a rainwater tax. So now the 7,000, almost 8,000, add 2.5% to that every year. So that's going to cost me a lot of money. So the only reason why I'm up here, because I was complaining about how much money it costs. And I just feel, when I was on the school committee, we tried to keep the buildings, as Nancy could say, for years. We had a great group of people working, keeping them clean, making sure everything worked. But I really can't believe that nobody spent as much money as they should have spent every year to fix some of the problems at Whitebrook. Now, I can see why the state says 40 years and you're asking for a new building. They should be saying, what the heck is wrong with the city not putting any money into the building? When I was on the school committee, that they were looking at the pool. All they had to do is fix the thing on the top of the building so the airflow would be better. Do you think they spent the money on that? Nobody spent the money on that. Now, my concern, is I also have a concern of all the taxes and everything that I have to pay for, but the elderly. I'm an elderly person just like you, and my payment doesn't go up at all. I feel that this community is a beautiful community. People, and it hasn't gotten there from all the brand new people that came in. It's from the people that have been there for years, worked really hard to keep everything nice and new things coming in. It's it's like a home community. Everybody looks after everybody else. They take care of everybody. So how the heck do you think they can afford $20 dollars per thousand? I mean, they don't work. They're elderly. I mean, we're not looking after our people if we're going to charge them that much money. And you talk about people coming in. They want to know what the tax rate is also. They might ask about the schools, but they also say, well, the tax rate will be higher than Northampton because they only have a tax rate of $17 per thousand. And we're going to be $20 per thousand. And, you know, all the years, I just don't feel that you've been a good steward of our money. I mean, you should have invested in what we had, not, you know, a new school doesn't make a good school. The teachers in it make a good school. The teachers need more money because half the teachers have to pay for half the stuff in their classroom. How fair is that? So I really think I looked at this program and I'm like, I would love that. But can we afford that? And I was so disappointed that we put a high school in and not an elementary school in. And I was wishing that when you put your vote out, you put elementary, middle school, or both. Maybe we would have gotten one of them. But people are looking at that money and saying, nobody's rich, but if I have to pay $1,600 more, and I know 2.5% is going to be added to that, I can't imagine somebody that has a $40,000 or $50,000 home and their taxes aren't going to go up to like $900,000. So I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to say something here, and I really do believe you've done a great job. But I think you neglected to give us the choice. We should have had a choice for that elementary school or both. But I just, you know, I'm sorry. I really wanted an elementary school so bad because I fought for it for so many years. And I don't know, everybody I talked to have said it's too much money. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Good evening, everybody. How you doing? My name's Howard Haberman. I've been here in town for 30 years now. I moved here from Holyoke. All three of my children went to school here, and I have 7 grandchildren here in town. Proud to say I live in Easthampton. First thing I want to say is about the rotary, the roundabout. You're saying that will slow people down. Well, I don't know how many people here go to the registry here in Easthampton and trying to come out to that rotary. It's impossible. If that was a stoplight, you'd be able to get out. That rotary does not let you out. You can sit there sometimes for 10 minutes waiting to get out. Okay, so whoever did your whatever it was there, that's ridiculous. I mean, that's a light is the way to go, definitely. You have to look at what we have already and see what we have, and you can't get out of there. It's impossible. I used to work part-time for the registry there. I used to have to go there every night, and I took the money to the bank, by the way. And I had to come out to go to the bank, and I couldn't get out, you know? So a stoplight, you stop at, okay? A rotary, you try to sneak your way into it, okay? So I don't know how you come up with, or how that person came up with, it's gonna slow the traffic down. You're still gonna have the same amount of traffic going there. It's just you're gonna have to go around it. That doesn't stop traffic. It might slow them down, but you're still gonna have the same amount of traffic, and people are still not gonna be able to get out. I spent a good many years, by the way, on a police force. I'm also on a fixed income like some people here. And by the way, I commend all you people for stepping up like that. I thought that was great. I have a question for you that you said something about we're losing $2 million a year to other schools. Well, if we put these new schools up, are we going to get that $2 million back? Is that going to come off our taxes? Is our taxes going to go back down if we get that back? That's a one question I have for you. Okay, I didn't hear anybody else ask that. There's a lot of things I'd love to say. Unfortunately, I don't want to keep these people here all night long. I just think my big thing was the roundabout, okay? And I was in West Springfield, and we have a few roundabouts. And they don't slow people down. We have more accidents on roundabouts than I have at stoplights. So please rethink that if this passes about that roundabout, because that obviously is not the way to go. People are always trying to sneak in there because they get frustrated in waiting. And if you think about it, over the years, driving through this one here we have in town, I've seen many of accidents. People get impatient waiting, okay? Because a light you're gonna wait 2 minutes for, there you can wait 4 or 5 minutes. You know, you're saying 12 minutes. Well, I'd rather wait 2 or 3 minutes at a light than have to sit there and wait for all this traffic to go around this thing so I can actually sneak out into it. All right, thank you very much.
I can make a comment about the $2 million. Since we opened the new high school, the money that we have sent out in terms of tuitions for choice and charter has decreased. So we would anticipate that that would be the case. Now, how that translates in the city budget, that I can't answer that, but I think that $2 million is a lot of money for us to lose to other school districts.
The other thing that we've noticed since the high school, if you look at the trend, is the number of students choosing to come to Easthampton and to bring revenue into the city's coffers through the Massachusetts School Choice Program has increased dramatically. It's gone up $200,000 a year in the last 3 years.
I have one other quick question. I lived in Hoyle the better part of my life when I was younger. I had trash pickup. I had parks, okay? My granddaughter goes to play soccer. I pay for her soccer. I pay to get in the park, okay? I pay for everything here in town. There's nothing I don't pay for. What does Easthampton give us for our tax dollars other than a new complex, okay? Which, listen, I was a police officer. I think they deserve everything, okay? Same with the fire, okay? What is Easthampton giving these people? And let me tell you something. All these senior citizens that were just up here, all you young people are going to become senior citizens, and remember this day, okay? You're all going to be senior citizens at one time. So think about what they're doing now, okay? And don't think that it can't happen to you in the future. Thank you.
Annette Siegel. I am one of the senior citizens that you think looks old, but they're not. Anyways, I'm retired. I'm on a super fixed income. I'm poor. I receive fuel assistance. I'm not gonna, I'm not ashamed of that. I have no children, and when the school gets built, I will probably lose my job because I'm a crossing guard. And I am fully so in support of this building. Our city needs it, okay? We can't just say, well, we can fix this here, we can fix that there. We need the school, we need it now, and if we don't do it now, yeah, I can't afford more taxes. I can't afford my taxes now. But you know what? I do. I find a way, I give up something, and I pay my taxes. And I'm sure it's gonna hurt some people, but since there are going to be hopefully better programs, or which I will probably apply for, since especially if you drop the age down, because I'm 68. I'm not quite 70 yet. So, we have to work together. We are not gonna be here in 10 years or 20 years. All of these young people are gonna be here. They need the school, the kids need the school, and we need it now. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Paul St. Pierre. First, I have to ask, what was your name again?
Taft, Norman Taft.
Taft, pleased to meet you.
Sir.
I had thought about this, what you had suggested in the past. In fact, for a while, because you always see all over the place these schools get voted down because seniors can't afford them. And I've always said, why can't we exempt seniors from the cost? That we'd pass the schools because the people who are voting them down are the seniors who can't afford them. But everyone says, no, it's impossible. Could never happen. Don't even talk about it. So it's amazing. I've never heard that they do this elsewhere.
In New York and in Arizona and several other places around the country. And this, we're going to pursue this.
We're going to pursue this, absolutely, absolutely. Our seniors built this city. We owe them. We owe them more than lip service. You know, we owe them our whole livelihoods. And we need to do them proud in our lifetimes for anybody who's my age. And that's just a fact. Now, I'm not here to talk about the cost, though. People have talked about that. I actually have a question in kind of a different direction. I don't know if you recall in January we spoke. I asked about the fact that we had soil samples tested and that the land was found unsuitable for building. And the high school here was also tested and found to have similar soil samples that were unsuitable for building. But there were modern soil engineering techniques that were described in the answer to my question. And I did some research and I found that technique of bringing in the soil, the denser soil, and anchoring with the geopiers, I think they're called, was a technique that was pioneered by Japan in the late 90s. And they released a report, and then that was brought to the United States in the early 2000s. And they've seen great success with this way of securing the facility because the piers go all the way down typically to the bedrock, and so they have a stable surface. But I did notice that the land underneath where the proposed facility would be does not have bedrock underneath the clay. In fact, it's right in the middle of the barn's aquifer. And I also saw that the technique of shooting down the geopiers has a risk in clay soil of contaminating groundwater. So my question is, and it's not a guarantee that would happen, it's just a possibility. But my question is, if that were to happen, what would the process look like to re-purify the aquifer, and who would be responsible for the cost? Thank you.
So I guess everyone's looking at me. Understand first, I'm an architect, I'm not a geotechnical engineer. I don't understand soils to the extent that the people who did our report and did the borings understand soils. I do understand a little bit about a lot of components of buildings, and there are several types of piers. The geopiers on this building and similar for what we're proposing, which isn't a done deal on the proposed building either. There's still additional evaluation to be done, but it's gravel. They're basically, it's gravel, and what they did is they pre-compressed the soil. That's the issue with clay, is that it expands and contracts with moisture and creates differential settlement, a lot of movement in the building. So they pre-compressed it, and then they put the gravel in to stabilize it. Basically, it was like a squeezed sponge, and then they pack around it so that it can't expand again. So I'm not sure what the source of contamination would be, because I didn't do the same research you did. Mm-hmm. But I don't. Right, but if it's gravel and it's clean material, I'm not sure what the contamination would be to the aquifer. That's my piece, and I can ask my geotechnical engineer if he's familiar with this and can give me a response. I can certainly do that, but I don't have the answer myself this evening for that. But that's my thinking, is I'm not sure what the contamination would be. You know, typically, liability on these projects is on the designer. I've heard people say, well, of course, you know, the architect, he wants the building, he's going to say whatever he needs to say to get it built. The liability is tremendous on what we produce. We certainly don't go into anything just to get a project done with a risk that it could come back to haunt us later. So, you know, I don't unfortunately have the answer to your question. I know that it's been successful. After the last forum, I did ask our engineer, has he done, you know, besides the high school, how many others? And he said dozens of other buildings in the Pioneer Valley. So I can go back to him and get some more information, and I'll specifically ask the question about the contamination.
Jumping back into this, one of the other points I wanted to make too was that in discussing with a number of friends and acquaintances the aspect of how they have lived in communities that have overtaxed their citizens to the point where those citizens have had to sell their property and move out to an area that's more cost-friendly. So, if we're going to be taxed to a greater extent, does that mean that our final relief is to die or to move to Costa Rica? I mean, I want you to be kind of sensitive. I'd like to hope that the city will be sensitive to the fact that the senior part of our population is going to take a big hit. And I want you to be sensitive, and I want you to give that consideration because, again, our funding is not raising. In fact, it's diminishing, and the 700 to 1,000 that the mayor is talking about on 41C will be a help, but it may be too small an amount to take care of the potential of people being forced to sell, or if I should pass away before my wife, will she be able to live in this community and meet her tax burden? I know that the family income will be lessened as a result of just she, and maybe she'll qualify for other parts, but can she remain in her own home? I think that should be a concern for all of us who are approaching senior status. So please give that consideration.
Dan Rist, I'm a city councilor in town and very much support this project. I hear you, Mr. Taft. I want to assure all the seniors in this room, as a councilor over there, Councilor Zaret, I think I can confidently say that the mayor's proposal to increase the senior exemption to $1,000 and reduce it to $65 will pass. I would expect it to pass unanimously. I am going to be a senior. The cost on me is great for this new. We hear you. We will do everything we can to mitigate this cost. I don't know what we're going to use our new revenues from cannabis, but I will propose that we find a way to get it back to the citizens because this cost is enormous. And I will certainly go on board with you, Mr. Taft. If you can find out more information, this is news to me, about programs in New York that mitigate senior taxes for the school department or just to mitigate property taxes.
It's called the STAR program.
You send me that email, I'll give you my email address. I'm going to find out more about that. That's exciting. But our seniors, we hear you. The city council supports this project, but not blindly. We know what it costs. I wanted to tell you, though, that leadership, to go back to what you were saying, is why we have this problem now. You say the 70s, I wasn't here, I've been here 40 years, but I wasn't here when those, what were they, 60-year-old buildings were considered to be rebuilt. They kicked the can down the road. In 2002, I was on the council. We voted against, not me, so you know, putting before the city the project for a new grade school. That was 16 years ago. The cost today is a lot more. The consequences of not doing this are something we as leaders in your community have to consider, for the whole community. It's not like we did do this blindly. We know the cost is high, but the cost of not doing it is higher. Question, which I brought forward before. If there's a no vote, what are the consequences? Number one, we could re-vote the same project in November. I've been told that, but it has to be the same project. There's no chance, MSBA, whoever's in charge of that, I think it's you, Mel, we can't re-vote a new alternate that might be cheaper in November, correct? We can't do that. And if I'm correct, the MSBA said, well, they voted no, and now you have to go to the back of the line. There's other communities, am I right? There's no accelerated, okay, they really need the school, the state. They're giving us $50 million. That's nothing to sneeze at. So 15 years from now or 5 years from now, what's it going to cost? We got to look at the whole picture. It's hard. It's hard on the seniors. It absolutely is. But it's hard on the whole community to say no. That's why we as counselors said we have to do this. And we'll do everything we can for you, believe me, and I think the mayor will too. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Amoroso. I am also a Easthampton resident for, I think, 12 years, but I'm bad at counting that. I have 3 little boys at Maple School in preschool, kindergarten, and in 2nd grade. And as a parent these days, we also have a lot of anxiety. We're a single income family, and taxes will affect us. You know, a large portion of our income is in our housing and in the taxes that we pay. So we also have anxiety, but as parents, we also have to kind of hold hope for our children in equal regard. And one of the questions I had is related to what Mr. Risk just said, was the risk of doing nothing, because that's sort of the other side, I think, of hope is, you know, what if the hope doesn't pan out? And, you know, I go to Maple School every day, and I see Maple School every day, and I'm inside every day because my preschooler won't wait outside. And my question is, what happens not only to the children, not only to the schools, but furthermore to the city and to the residents if we have these larger unsubsidized bills? Because that's going to come up in our taxes as well. I would not hesitate to guess on that. But what sort of effect does it have on the trajectory of a city and of its people and of its cohesiveness? Because this is a decision that we have to make together. This is why we all pay the same tax rate, because we're all kind of, as Easthampton citizens, lobbed in it together. So that's my question, is what is our trajectory as a town and as all of us together if we do not, you know, if we don't vote for this?
So when we looked at some illustrations around communities that have not voted in a new school or not invested in school infrastructure, one, I mean, certainly the property values stagnate, but more importantly, what starts to happen is that employers don't regard that community as a place that they want to locate in or near. And more in the economy you're seeing employees and employers want to centralize as many services, leisure, as well as necessary services to live in one place, in one community. I would say that Easthampton has experienced the growth and growth in their tax base over the last, say, 10 years around a very unusual, unique event of open space in the mills and a very fortunate project around the pond. Those are one-time events. The mills will fill, the pond is done, and we have a lot of other projects and we around, and we have to give people who came here a reason to stay. We have to create, or I wrote down, hold hope for our children, and that is a measure. Sure, tax rate, people look at tax rates, absolutely, when they're moving, but they also look at investment in school, and it gives them surety going forward, whether they're a small business, or whether they're a homeowner, or they're a renter. And we need all of that and all of those folks and that activity in our city. And a school, new school, is a very big part of that, to keep a stable, sustainable economy. There's really no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And there are certain populations within our city, and not just seniors who own property, but also seniors who rent property, that we have to be very mindful of and continue to do so. And I would also say, on a larger kind of plane of thought, I think it's something that, we need to do across the country, that we have some very fragile populations and we need to be mindful and look at creative, tax, maybe proposals around that. But mindfulness, yeah.
Thank you.
And I'd like to piggyback on what Counselor Riss said. You talked about mismanaging funds for a long time and not building a school when we should have built a school, making repairs when we couldn't. I know for decades there was a mindset to keep taxes down as best as we could. I wasn't on the school committee. I wasn't, part of these decisions, but I know what it's like to look at a budget, and I know for decades the decision was piece together the buildings or lay off teachers. And that's a really hard decision to make. And as much as people would have liked to put money into the buildings and repair them as repairs came up instead of patching them together, when you're looking at how many cities and districts have laid off so many teachers and it's devastated the school system, we're actually in a growth cycle. Our district is getting stronger. We're not laying off teachers. We're educating our students, holding on to those teachers, and creating a quality program. So I would have loved to see our buildings repaired a couple of decades ago, last 10 years. But I understand why that decision was not made. Now we're at a point where we've got quality programs, we've got the teachers, we've got the educators that we need. We have to do something to address those buildings. The time has come that it has to be done. And to the gentleman's comment and Councilor Riss' comment, my husband is a city councilor. He loves to research. He has been looking into different ideas. I know the mayor has. I know the entire city council has all been really concerned about the impact of this building project on our seniors. So I love your idea. I will go home and toss it out with my husband, and he will start to research that and work with the city councilors and the mayor to come up with creative ways. I can't promise you that we're going to be able to solve this whole problem, but I can tell you that, as Councilor Riss said, everybody does care. Everybody does want an answer to this, and we haven't stopped looking. Past May 22nd, we're not going to stop thinking about our seniors. The entire city, especially our city councilors and our mayor, are going to be actively looking at coming up with more and more ideas for how to get around this. As Councilor Riss said, we're talking about maybe income from cannabis. There are so many different things that are happening in Easthampton, and I know from talking to my husband, talking to the mayor, that this is something that all of them are concerned about. So it's not going to be swept under the carpet. We're not telling you this, and then May 22nd happens, we get our school, and we go on and forget about you.
I sent an email to your husband and to the president of City Council requesting a specific meeting. I'm going to be at their meeting tomorrow night, but if you read his email, you'll see the gist of what I'm proposing.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm back again. I have a question for you. You said your husband is in the real estate, and I heard you make a comment earlier that this new school is going to bring up the value of our homes. Well, doesn't that mean reassessment, which means higher taxes? Yeah, it's a yes or no question.
Yeah, the answer is yes. I mean, if you look at the value of your home today compared to 20 years ago or 30 years ago, I mean, I assume everyone wants the value of their home to go up, not down.
Obviously, I didn't buy a house so I could lose money. It's not a vehicle.
Exactly.
Okay? That's over the last 30 years.
Yeah.
You know, I can tell you what I paid for my house. I can give you an estimate what my house is worth today. And we're talking about, like I said, 30 years later,
Right.
you know, and I didn't double or triple my money, that's for sure, okay? But I just want everybody to be aware that that's gonna come with a reassessment, okay? A reassessment, your house is gonna go up, your taxes obviously are gonna keep on going up. And unfortunately, this whole society is tax broke and insurance broke, okay? What we pay for taxes and insurance in this country is ridiculous. And I have a question for you, Ms. Mayor. I was told something, and I don't know how true it is or how untrue it is. Does Williston pay taxes in our town?
On property that is used for educational purposes, it does not. It's exempt under the federal revenue code. For property that they own that's used for commercial purposes, like Tandem Bagel, they do pay property taxes.
And all their housing?
If it's educational purpose, they do not. If it's,
Educational
say,
purpose is, to me,
So
would
faculty
be,
housing, dorms, if it's related to the purpose of the school, they are exempt from property taxes. But say they were to buy.
so like their complex they have with their basketball and all of that, that's a taxable? And their fields and all of that is all taxable?
No, that's
That's considered
exempt from taxes.
All right.
Why would they be tax exempt when they're a private organization collecting funds for each student?
It's under the federal tax code, it's educational purpose. And they're a private school.
But we know Smith College and other colleges in Northampton pay dollars in lieu of taxes. Does Williston do the same?
They do assist the city in different ways, and one of them is to buy capital items off of our capital improvement plan.
I saw that. But what is their contribution then, over and above capital improvements, like the sewer that we're talking about or have been talking about?
Well, they would pay, right now, we're looking at a project on Park Street where they're actually going to do some improvement to our water main because they need to do something for their own property, and they'll bear the cost of that.
They need larger capacity, which is what is driving that capital improvement. But I'm saying other than the capital improvement that they're requesting for these new buildings for housing, shouldn't they be paying something? I mean, you know, they're in business to generate income by virtue of what students pay.
Pilot programs you're referring to from the colleges, those are voluntary. And as the mayor said, this is a federal, we can't force any private school to pay taxes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure, we can. But I would just, the capital improvement that they need around sewer or whatnot that happens is in conjunction, obviously, with our DPW. And there was some bit in the news, and we can get some more information, that they're actually, around that improvement, are going to help another issue that the city has there and pay for that on themselves.
I'm sorry I'm back again. The young man right here, very intelligent conversation about Whitebrook. They've been when I was on the school committee, they were talking about that it's an area that the school might be sinking. That's why when you were going to put it behind them, like that's the same area. But we had saved back then all that money where Treehouse is. That was going to be for where the new schools were supposed to be there. Then the city decided to give it to them. And so we were without a place for a new school. And, you know, I don't want it to sound like the elders are against education, because I wouldn't have spent 14 years fighting for the education for the kids. My kid went to school here. So, I mean, he went to Maple Street, and it's the same as, it hasn't changed. It's the same. It's stuffed full of kids and things. And I know everybody complains about the schools and, you know, your line items, you have to bend, borrow, and steal. Well, obviously, the town doesn't give enough to the education to keep the schools, you know, going. I mean, I feel like, you know, do I want to trust the city to take care of the schools when they haven't been doing that? I mean, that's the reason why Whitebrook is what it is because they have not put any money into it. If I had a house, I have a house, and if I didn't keep making improvements to that house, it would fall down, and I wouldn't have any money. But my concern is the city really going to, come through to keep these? I know this high school has some issues too. I've heard quite a few people complaining about different things, and nobody's fixing them. So how can we, or myself even, trust the city to fix this, keep the schools the way they should be kept? It costs money, I know that, but I know I would fight for the budget every single year. But it's time for the city to realize that you have to invest the money into the schools to keep them completely clean and up to date.
I'll just jump in before the gentleman behind you jumps in. I just want to stress that there's a difference between maintenance and structural issues. No one can speak about the cleanliness of our buildings or the upkeep of our buildings. You can't change the four walls that were built in 1896. We can't make it bigger. We can't, there's structural, support, load-bearing walls you can't move. You can't make classrooms bigger to meet today's standards. You can't create gymnasiums and cafeterias where they don't exist. We can't change concrete that was poured in 1896, and Maple Street is on a postage stamp lot. Center School, if you've been there, postage stamp lot. Pepin School, it's basically built on the land it's sitting on, and that's it. So we can't change that. I would never, ever, ever question for a moment the upkeep of the buildings. If there's an issue at Whitebrook, it's not maintenance. You can't, if it wasn't constructed properly in the beginning, if the open classroom concept didn't work in the beginning and we put up makeshift walls, that's not maintenance. Our maintenance crew is second to none in all of our schools, no doubt in my mind. Patrick.
Thanks a lot, Tom. You just said like a quarter of the stuff I was going to get up here and say. I'm Patrick Bruff. I am on the school building committee with this group. MJ, you said it. You said it. The city has to invest. You've all said it. The city has to do something. We are doing something. We can do nothing. I have told every person, I told you this, and I've told every person who has complained on Facebook and said they can't afford it, who have said, whatever their reason is, I want you to vote no. I am the only committee member who's going to stand up here and tell you that. If you can't afford it, sir, and you can't afford it, vote no. That is your choice. That is where we are. This is the society we have built. This is the system that we have. I think you've all said it. We understand the need. So we understand the need, then what are we doing? We have to do something. So that is where we are today. I wish I had a magic wand and could wave it and say, you don't have to pay taxes, you don't have to pay taxes, you don't have to pay taxes. Because I would do it right now. But continuing to kick the can down the road, I know it's been said a few times, and I never get emotional, but I'm getting emotional about this because, again, there are lots of folks who I can completely understand you voting no. That is your right. That is what we're here for. But you've all looked at the slides. Everyone talks about how much the increase is going to be. Put the slide back up there that shows what happens when we don't do it. Put the slide back up there that shows $135 million out of our dollars, not some from the state, all from our dollars. Your pocket, your pocket, your pocket, my pocket, everyone's pocket. So this is not, you want us to be fiscally responsible. You want your community to be fiscally responsible and do the right thing. It's dollars and cents. I don't want my taxes to go up any more than anyone else. Anybody want their taxes to go up? Raise your hand. See, nobody does. and I agree. Yeah, exactly. You don't want, but I completely agree with you. But let's do the math. Let's look at the slide. I mean, we're not hiding anything. This committee has worked 2 years, and I know you've all thanked us, and I appreciate that. And we don't do it for the thanks. We do it because we need this for our community. And I mean, I love to hear the stories when you guys, when someone who's lived there for their whole life, I love to hear those stories where you get up there and say, we could have done this then. We could have, you're making the pitch for me. I don't have to make the pitch. We could have done something. You know, there's a bunch of stuff, you know, people talking about percentages of what we could have had back in the 70s or in the 80s or back in 2002. We absolutely could have. We didn't. Here we are. So what do? Do we just ignore this? We vote it down. We say, forget it. We're not going to do this. It's not worth it. I can't afford it now. So that's great. You can't afford it now. I can't afford it now. You can't afford it now. 10 years from now, we'll have a room full of people, same amount of people. The cost will be double of what's up there. Same people will say the same thing. I want you to vote no if you can't afford this. I completely appreciate that. I have no problem with that. But we cannot just assume that we're not going to do anything or just kind of let this lie. I don't know. I'm starting to ramble now, so I don't know.
You know, I've been here 50 years.
Yeah.
And my children went through the system here. And for those of us who have been here for a long period of time, who have supported the system,
Yep.
It's now maybe an opportunity for others, younger folks.
I agree.
School children.
Listen, I agree.
And maybe we need to be thinking out of the box.
I totally agree.
Whether we put a surtax on properties.
Well,
$300,000 or more.
I can't answer that question.
Let's take the discussion out behind the school shed. And if there's any new question, I mean, we can have these discussions later after we kind of break up the meeting. We can get into discussions. I just basically want to try to entertain any new questions that might be out there that we haven't answered.
I got one. Can you go back one more slide? Another one? Right there. Okay. So the pre-K to 4 school, the total cost was estimated to be $60.5 million. Can you go 2 forward again? And scenario 2 suggests that the total cost, if we build the pre-K to 4 and then rebuild the middle school, would be 145. Do I take it to mean that the estimated cost of rebuilding just the middle school alone would be $65 million more than a pre-K through 4? I just wanted to make sure that that was accurate.
Escalation in that. In other words, you wouldn't do the grade 5 to 8 school until 2029 because you'd have to wait for the next cycle of the MSBA funding. I'm assuming that...
So that would be with MSBA funding...
That's right.
...included, so
right.
That reimbursement rate might be different.
Well, no, that assumes, and that's why you'd be getting, in this case, the difference between the 80,000 and 145 is $65 million from MSBA as a grant.
Okay.
So that's the rationale.
Okay. And one other question, too. I know that in Congress right now, they're working on an infrastructure plan, and those are always very popular because they're bipartisan. And the plan right now is for the federal government to subsidize school construction, among many other things, 20% of the cost. Would this qualify, if we approve it this year, for the plan that maybe hasn't even passed yet? But if we could push it or just delay it like a year or two, could we get 20% of the cost of this covered?
Your crystal ball may be better than mine. I don't know. I have no idea.
I know someone said that we lost maybe as much as 40% by waiting too long.
But it could be 20% minus the price escalation of raw materials. So for say,
Sure.
I mean, hypothetically, the federal government offers a 20% discount or payment on the building of new school, but also puts in place tariffs that makes raw materials go up 25%. We're down 5%.
You also can't, this is an opportunity with MSBA that's now or not. In other words, you have to take it now or reapply and go back and start all over again. So that $50 million that Mr. Rist, mentioned is very real right now. But if it's voted down or if this whole thing goes away, it doesn't just reemerge next year or 2 years later.
How many contractors were involved in the request for bid process?
Oh, we haven't started bidding yet, no.
That comes.
Hypothetically, the number that's being thrown out, 109, is a speculated,
Can't go higher, can only go lower.
so you've aimed high.
We've aimed to build the project you saw presented tonight. And I don't think we've aimed high, we've aimed to build, and it's a very aggressive 109 million to build a project of this size. But we can't even begin, you saw in one of the slides, the bidding begins 2000 and
Middle of next year.
next
little over a year.
August, we'd go out to bid. We can't go out to bid before we know the project's been approved, so this is like the first step. One more. Not that I'm trying to kill this, but go for it, John.
All right. My name is John Atwater. I am a member of the committee. I am the proud father of 3 graduates from this building. I can tell you that my kids, who are all registered to vote, are going to vote yes for this project because they believe that the future of Easthampton is in its youth. They appreciate the opportunities that were given to them and the wherewithal that was given to them, and they know that it's going to put a burden on my wife and I. Am I fortunate enough to be able to continue to work and grow my income? Yes. But do I also feel the pinch of taxes? Every time I write a check, my heart goes out to you. But I know that what I'm doing is helping the people in town. And that is my solace, that I am helping the minds of the young kids who are going to be the future leaders. They're going to be the people who in 40 years are going to have to make this same decision that we are and say, yes, it is worth it. Thank you.
David?
David Boyle on the committee. I'm for the project, a little discouraged from the mood tonight, but I'm also a little bit encouraged, especially like with your proposal and your assertiveness. And, actions have consequences. In 2010, we changed the zoning that eliminated elderly housing. Me being a developer, I was the only idiot that was opposing it. But now we don't have, I can't build elderly housing in town right now if I wanted to. Where was the seniors then? I understand it's the taxes, but the seniors need to start realizing they can't only come out when there's a tax. You can't become disengaged just because you're 62 years old. You have to always be involved. Actions have consequences. In 2002, City Council would not let it go to the voters. Think about that. It was undemocratic. One of the city councilors said, I was afraid it might pass. Well, the elementary school in 2002 would have cost $35 million. We'd be done with it. We wouldn't be here tonight. We'd be watching a ball game. Actions have consequences. So you can't revisit the past. You can't redo history. But we need to be engaged now. It's a community. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to bury a senior. It does. I want to retire in this town. And even though my income is growing, at some point in time, the taxes just keep coming and coming and coming. But so I'm encouraged, hopefully, that we'll have some engagement with the seniors and work on these solutions. I think if you can't afford it, you should vote no. I agree with Pat. I think everything that's been said about preloading, the roundabout, Whitebrook, I think that's all crap. It comes down to either you can afford to it and you don't think, you either think it's a good value or you don't think it's a good value. It's a personal decision, and if it's voted down, that is democracy. That's the way it is. And then we'll have to go back to the drawing board, and we'll try again. Thanks.
Thanks, David. So, oh, Owen, sorry. This is school, you have to raise your hand.
Thank you. I just wanted to really state really briefly, I think Councilor Rist, my colleague, did a really good job of stating the full support of the council, not only for this project, but for all the seniors and people with limited incomes who might be impacted by it. So don't think for a minute that when this project is voted in, that we're going to forget about you. And don't walk out that door tonight without emailing me or emailing Councilor Rist or Councilor Carey, who's here in the audience tonight, with your ideas, because progress doesn't move forward if we just settle for the status quo. And I think that in regards to the comments that were made earlier tonight by the woman who was here, we need to maintain these buildings if we're going to build them. And I can't answer why that didn't happen in the past because I wasn't part of the city government then. But I can tell you going forward, as long as I'm engaged, poor or deferred maintenance of our buildings, not on my watch. In regards to this project, I wanted to thank the people here tonight for all their hard work over the last 2 years, bringing together a very impressive and very complicated process. And I think from a financial standpoint, we stand at the precipice of what's basically an amazing opportunity to build a very affordable school. And as you see, the alternatives are much more costly to us. So if we're going to break it down to dollars and cents, this is the opportunity now. And I think as either Mr. Atwater or Mr. Bruff had mentioned earlier, I don't want to be here in 5 or 10 more years discussing this again when it's going to be 2 to 3 times the price. We have an opportunity right now. All these good folks up here have given us a project that we can believe in, that's been thoughtfully planned and developed, and that I think we can all say we can vote yes for. Mayor Cadger, our former mayor, she believed in this project, and she shepherded this forward right now and handed the torch off to Mayor LaChapelle. I believe in this. And to quote from the late Whitney Houston, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show us all the beauty of possess inside. Anyways, but here.
We said no alcohol.
But regarding our children and regarding our seniors, that's community. From the young to the old to the people in the middle, we're all in this together. I don't want you to feel marginalized, but I don't want my kids to feel marginalized either. There has to be a way we can figure out and come together and make this happen together. So we vote yes, we figure out the tax issues. The mayor's already doing an incredible, admirable job of making that happen by raising abatements. You, sir, I'd love to hear these programs you put forward because maybe that's the solution. I legislated hard for cannabis for our community because I felt that the tax revenue can help our community. Is that the great green hope? I don't know, but it's certainly a possibility. So let's be a community. Let's respect our seniors who, as Mr. St. Pierre said, they help build this city, but let's respect our kids who are going to build the future projects. Let's figure out how to do this together, and let's figure out how to make this vote a successful vote, and vote yes on May 22nd, please.
Thanks, Owen. That's the last time we serve alcohol at this meeting. Just kidding, Owen. Just great job. Thank you. The vote is 3 weeks from tonight. We hope everybody comes out to vote. If there are questions, you can, as I think either Cindy or the superintendent said earlier, continue to field the questions through to the folks that can give you the answers, please. The school committee chair, the superintendent, the mayor, the committee members. I will assure you, we don't have all the answers. We go to the experts for them, and sometimes the experts have to go to the experts for them. That's the process, but we will attempt to answer any other questions that come before us in the next 3 weeks. We thank you all very much for coming out, and thank you all for your input.